mosaic families have the difficulty because you've got his and her families. You have the ex families that come involved. Sometimes these things can get enmeshed
Yes.
and convoluted on boundaries. And so it's being very careful of recognizing those steps too. Welcome to Coach Soul, the podcast where we explore therapeutic ways to the best versions of ourselves. I'm your host, Steve Hudgens. I'm a licensed professional counselor dedicated to helping you navigate life's challenges. In each uplifting episode, we'll discuss mental health, relationships, self-care, emotional well-being, and personal growth. Join me and with my co-host, Kenya Evelyn, a therapeutic life coach, where sometimes we'll even welcome special guests to our show that share their experience and expertise. So let's embark on this transformative path together and discover a healthier and happier you. All right, welcome back. I hate to do that to my listeners and viewers, but time ran out. Teresa, but welcome back again. And thank you so much for you reading my work and curiosity. It just makes us better clinicians when we're able to review people's work and understanding that things change.
Yes.
I think, it's important to be able to grow as a therapist so that we can help, but it's also important to grow as an individual. And what a great segue to bounce back to, what do we learn?
Yes.
And as you pointed out in my last study or the last podcast, we talked about, is there an awakening, so to speak, within individuals? And as I was just sharing, I do realize the faults that I brought into my marriages and it took place. By the time that I took her back to court, there was some documentation that highlighted some issues and then explained the reasons why. That prompted me to go back to school. I went back to school, received my master's degree, and that's when I started changing in 2012 to become a therapist, because not only have I changed, bringing, value to my own self, but also to healing. And what's interesting is that it wasn't only in the second, but maybe a relationship in between or the third marriage. There was a 42, 45-year-old that had 5 marriages already. When you think about that perspective, I think the minimum that I found was 3. Sorry, they're on the third marriage. That was only 2 of them, but most of them have been married twice or more. After the second one, and it's like they're realizing something's wrong here. And as we started with the last podcast, how come there were so few men? Majority of it was women that had self-discovery. Now, the one that was 65, where they split because of friends became first over their marriage, that led to that separation. Other than that, I think he even realized that, hey, I should have been more aware. If men are able to lead and be able to lead, that also becomes a challenge, because in our society, our culture has shifted from toxic masculinity to toxic femininity, where men are pushed out of the home now. And that's here in the United States. Is it the same there in Norway?
Yes.
They take to the divorce and they lead. They've kind of pushed men out.
Yes.
So what's interesting now is that many people, I think this is the first time in world history, we have more divorced single people than we do married. And it's more cohabitation is taking place because the costness of a divorce.
Yes, it's huge. So how high is the rates for divorce now in the US?
The divorce rate here,
Yes.
it's first time, it's high. I don't know what the divorce rate actually is per se for the number. I do know there is studies coming out that women over the age of 40 engage more in divorces here. It's interesting because I was talking to a doctor the other day, just to get her perception. We don't talk enough about women's health in our couples counseling. I had a lady who was on a diet, keto diet, that was diabetic type 2 and also menopausal. She was extremely high anxious, which was causing some issues within the marriage. Husband validated she had a normal life, childhood. And I'm like, okay, we'll say normal. We're each unique. So I began to dive into some of her medical. And that's what
Yeah.
I found out. And it depleted serotonin.
Hmm.
Menopause causes this. And so I
Yes.
said, we need to look at serotonin levels. Well, doctors
Yes.
don't check that. It's interesting. And so when I told her about getting this checked out, she went to two doctors and they said, well, your therapist he didn't know what he's talking about.
Hmm.
She went to her OBGYN and they prescribed her a progesterone patch. She comes
Yeah.
back about 3 to 4 weeks later and says, I'm normal. And I said, imagine that.
That's
So
great.
sometimes hormones
Yes.
play. And
Oh,
it's
many, many times. Many, many times.
what I try to explain to men is that we need to be that solid foundation for her and not be so reactive to her emotion, but to be supportive. But most men don't understand crying or
Yeah.
the anxiety or the anger that stems out. And so the women who are not happy
Hmm.
in the marriage tend to divorce. And
Yes.
what I'm finding is they look for happiness outside of the marriage and not working on ways to work on the marriage itself. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's the same here. And I think that, we also learn from the parents that raised us. We learn their communication style and we learn all these things. So we
Mm,
bring that into the marriage. And it's difficult for a couple to just learn how to communicate without going inside
mm.
and look at their own traumas. It's almost impossible because it will be splinters, as you call them, splinters. Yes.
Splinters, yes.
Yeah. That will be activated, and then the feelings, the emotions take over from the rational brain. So it's like they need to work on themselves in order to communicate better and not just leave the marriage. So
And
that's
and
my.
that's one of the things that I want to make clear. I'm not saying it's all hormone based either, because you still have activated trauma that's within inside. Been working with several couples, and one of the things that the terminology is assume innocence. Just because she's elevated or he's elevated does
Mhm.
not necessarily mean that it was you.
No, that's true.
So assume innocence, to take that deep breath, calm
Yes.
that inner child down. This is not my
Yeah.
dad. This is not my mom yelling
Yeah.
at me. Something
Yeah.
is off. It doesn't have to do with me. Let's assume innocence and say, hey,
Yeah.
it sounds really tough what you're expressing to me. I
Yeah.
want to hear you, but the
Yes.
tone is speaking louder than the words that I want to hear. Can we sit down and just communicate and talk about this?
That would be perfect if everyone did that.
Yes.
Because then everyone needs just to be heard, but many times the other person needs to defend themselves or they get a feeling they need to. And also, I think I have heard and I believe that men have this instinct of fixing, right? For the partner. If the partner is unhappy, I need to fix this. It's a
Right.
load of responsibility that can make them, what do you say in English? You feel, yeah,
Like,
you feel you can't make it. That's the
okay.
wrong word. Yeah, you know what?
Frustrated, they become frustrated, they begin to shut down to where
Yes.
they just don't know
Yeah.
how to respond. For our listeners, one of the tools there when that happens is I express the terminology: men are like stick shifts. They're like cars, stick shifts. You have to
Yeah.
shift us, push our clutch in, shift the gear that you want us in, because we're in that tease my clients all the time. Men's brains are like waffles. We're compartmentalized. We have a do nothing box that drives women crazy. How do you not think about anything? Women's brains is like spaghetti. Every noodle touches every noodle. You may
Yeah.
start off with going to the grocery store and you end
Yes.
up of wondering, wait a minute, what did I forget? And it's just a
Yes.
rabbit trail. And
Yes.
so oftentimes we become frustrated within our own self, especially when it's splintered, trauma induced things
Yes.
that we're not identifying, working through.
Yeah, that's
And
true.
so communication is important in blended families, because you have different dynamics that come into place, that
Yes.
you're more often to lose your identity in blended than you are in a first marriage, simply
Yes.
because you're having to be the step spouse, the,
Yes.
a
Four people
whole,
instead of two.
yes, thank you.
Yes. Mm. And many times for wounded people, like they have scars. So it's very difficult. So it's not strange that more second marriages ends in divorce. It's not strange.
No, and as a therapist, it's our, I don't like the word duty. That's not the right word.
No.
Obligation probably would be the better term to be able to differentiate the people within, because I've interviewed, I don't know, 10 or more therapists, and they treat
Mhm.
individual families as intact.
Mhm.
And we've got to pull away from that in treating. And so, one of the ways that I approach it is dealing with the trauma first. Couples come to me and say, I'll say, okay, what brings you in? Well, we just don't know how to communicate. And I'll say, well, obviously you did, because you were married. You communicated very well that you liked each other and married. Somewhere the light switch went off. What's happening is now is you're still communicating,
Yeah.
but it's a childhood hurt wound that we're communicating. And so I focus on the childhood wounds from both, and I operate from what I call as stair step therapy. I'll start with a
Yes.
couple of sessions, and then I'll go to a him, a her, and then back to couple again, because I find often when it's individualized, they're able to speak up more.
Yes, I know. I do the same with couples.
Yeah,
Yeah. And sometimes two times in between individual before they get back together again or whatever. Yeah. It's important.
it is.
Yeah. And also to talk about more about their own traumas, like when they are alone. And yeah, it's so important. Yeah.
It is. And that's one of the things that I found in the study is unresolved trauma. We could sit here and say, okay, first marriages, we know divorce happens in 3, 7, 14, 21 years of marriage. 3
Yeah.
because it's the first child, 7 because it's the second child,
Mhm.
14 is the teen years, and 21, they're out of the house, so to speak.
Yeah.
And so we can understand that. Blended families is a more dynamic communication, lack
Mhm.
of boundaries, and the financial
Yeah.
strains that's, especially with the childhood hurt wounds.
Yes. And also something I read in your study, it was like many of the people experienced lack of support from their family or the community around when they divorced. That is so hurtful. I mean, they wanted them to stay in a marriage even if it was bad. Is that normal? Is it like a taboo to get divorced, or how is it?
Well, there's different dynamics that we need to kind of separate here. Out of all 11 are faith based.
Yes.
One of them came from an Amish community.
Yes.
Amish do not believe in divorce, just like Catholicism doesn't believe in divorce. And so oftentimes the culture will say, no,
Mm.
cannot. And then you have your belief systems that
Mm.
say, no, you need to stay in this marriage. And so there were a couple that felt like faith based or religion, so to speak, kind of influenced that on them. But yet, when they did separate, divorce, first marriages, it's difficult because your partner's friends, they're going to side with your partner, your friend's going to side with you. And so oftentimes that happens.
Mm.
Blended families, they didn't feel supported because their families, look, you did this twice. So there's got to be something wrong with you, basically, when typically that's not the case. It's
Mm.
just how we, through our attachment styles, we attach to people that if we're not becoming aware, working on our attachment styles, becoming healing, then we're not going to heal.
No, that's true. And I also think that if you have a family that tells you this, you say here, like something has to be wrong with you, then I mean, it's a lack of support. And that
Yes.
points to the childhood trauma
Yes.
in my experience. It's like, okay, maybe these parents didn't make you feel loved. And then you pick a partner who just followed through with the same pattern, right? So,
Well, in one of the cases that I've talked to, the spouse was narcissistic. And so what do they do? That's not their fault. So
mm,
they post things on Facebook, social media to paint a bad picture. And so oftentimes they will do this. I mean, I've had that happen to where my spouse posted things on there, and my gut feeling, I'm talking to a friend. And so that's
mm,
another thing, going on a rabbit trail here in a second. When I talked to my friend, I said, these are my suspicions. No, you're not. No, that she would never. Well, my
Mm.
suspicions were right. Just have the sixth sense. Having on the job training as a criminal investigator for the military causes suspicions and things like that. But circling back around, a piece of advice to our listeners when it comes to friends and family: don't poison the water, because sometimes when you poison the water, it's based on anger, it's based on frustration, and it's based on feelings and emotions that you go and you want to seek that comfort, and we poison the water.
Yes.
Now, what happens when, oh my gosh, that was my fault? I didn't realize until after the fact. Well, the water is poisoned. Your family support groups are going to say, why are you staying with that person then?
Yes. So important what you're talking about. Yeah. That's my, I don't know if that's more common for women or men to poison the water. What's your experience?
From the women that I interviewed, the majority of it comes to women because they social network.
I know. Yeah.
Some men will also engage with other women, which leads more into infidelity for them because they're getting the attention they need from another female than they are from their spouse. And that leads to a divorce.
Yeah.
So it's okay. Who do we talk to, Steve? Well, Teresa and I are therapists. Talk to us.
Yeah.
We are able to help. It's how do you present the information? I know we're upset. So take that break for a moment. Don't go calling up your friend and say da 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 because you're frustrated.
Yes. And it's the same as talking behind your partner's back. It's
Yes,
like, it's not right. It's not right at all. And it's also maybe sometimes make it very difficult to stay because you have said so many bad things
right.
and you feel almost obligated. I have to go because all my friends know how bad things have been. You understand what I mean? It's like,
Yeah,
I always tell my couples to not do that. Talk together or talk with me or, yeah, not
right.
with other people for normal things, of course. So it's very important.
It is important. And mosaic families have the difficulty because you got his and her families, you have the ex families that come involved. Sometimes these things can get enmeshed
Yes.
and convoluted on boundaries. And so it's being very careful of recognizing those steps too. So did you have any other things that stuck out to you within the study that?
No, I think we have talked about most of them here and there. And I think it's just so very important topic that we are talking about here. It's like, I think also that the attachment styles,
Mhm.
that's also related to traumas from childhood. It's not just something we are born with. I mean, what do you think?
To me, it's a learned behavior. It's
Yes.
conditional. I call it muscle memory, so to speak, because we're remembering ways to attach. And there are about four different attachment styles. And I talk about that in my book. I'm more familiar with the anxious style because my father was military, left when I was a year and a half to go to Thailand, came back when I was about six or seven or eight, I think. We're living in San Antonio. He went to Korea by himself on a hardship tour. And so that's twice a prominent parent. Now, my parents are still married. They're in
Yes.
their 80s. How did they make it? I don't know. I'm glad that they kind of did, stuck it together. We've had our
Yeah.
ups and downs type thing. I love them both. But at the same time, it's that created an attachment. And there was other things that came out. How did I what ways did I get attachment anxious? But it wasn't until I started my master's program. Now I had therapy prior
Yeah.
to becoming a therapist. That helped a lot. Became a therapist, and that really opened the doors to where, there were some issues that happened. The blended family, I was divorced. That's when I had a 34% chance of living by 2021 due to cancer. I just felt everything was coming down around me. And so I dated a little bit, but not too much. And then I decided I'm going to go back. Thank God
Mm.
I don't have cancer. It's not coming back. I am cured. It's 7 years going. So I'm thankful for that. But at the same time, I went back and I took a sabbatical of dating and focused on my doctorates. And I'm thankful I got my doctorates. And so it is important to reevaluate yourself, but being very, and I think this too, as clinicians, it's important to tell our clients, be careful how much introspection you do of yourself, because we can dig too deep and wound our own self by our own thoughts.
You think so?
Uh, I remember, and I'm
Yeah.
probably looking back, I introspected too much to where I lowered my self confidence, lowered my self esteem. And so therapy helped me to get out of that cycle. And so that's where you get the depressive mood disorders, the chronic, the manic, those type of things. And so it's realizing that sometimes these things are not all your fault. It takes two to tango.
Yes.
Now, mind you, we've all been wounded.
Yes.
And
We all.
sometimes birds of a feather flock together, so to speak. And so we do attract where we are. I've seen that too often. So if you have two wounded people coming together, that's the reason why in Celebrate Recovery, divorce care, Al-Anon, AAs, we tell people do not date with the person within, because we're still working through these traumas. And it's easy to gravitate to what we want to do is to serve that other person, to help them not feel this way. So I think it's important for us to really look in, but being careful not to dig in without some
Yes.
professional help, so that you're
Yeah.
not degrading yourself.
I agree with you. It's very important to have a therapy or therapist or psychologist or whatever to dig with. I
Yes.
think so. Yes. Because then you are not alone. And many wounds are from being alone in all the different stuff throughout the life.
So,
Yeah.
as we come to a close, I really appreciate this opportunity of your curiosity of my study that was done on blended families. Anything you want to add to, or what you took away from the study that might inspire other therapists?
I think that it was more clear to me all the obstacles that second marriage comes with. All these different angles that we have talked about, it was more clear that, of course, it's double up with pain, hurted people, and all these children and grandparents, and it's so much, and the financial strains. And yeah, so I think it's a very, very important study you have done. And I think that it will make people more aware of other things, what they need to do. Yeah.
I think it's important. It's great that we have quantitative study that does all the statistical research. Yes, it's great to have qualitative, but what I'm finding in research, there's not enough hermeneutical, talking, engaging, being able to interview to bring a bigger picture. I think another study that I might be interested in doing is military, because I grew up military. I was military. The impact that military has on families,
Yes.
because we're creating more and more blended families.
Yes.
And what are some tools that we can do to work on reducing divorce in military families might be one.
Yes.
Another study that I recommend that if anybody's interested in is cultural. I think culture also plays a big role into how do we view marriage, because different countries look at marriage differently, but here again, it's interesting, not only in Norway, but United States, that cohabitation's more and more and more common. So we're going to have more cohabitation blended families, or mosaic, I would like to call it. So I appreciate your time. I'm praying that my book will be published in September with all this information. I'm still working on it. Thank you so much for your time. And to my listeners, take care and God bless. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode on Coach Soul. As we wrap up, we want to remind our listeners of a few key points. This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not substitute professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. The content shared here is based on professional opinion but may not apply to everyone's situation. Always consult with a qualified healthcare provider before making changes to your mental health care. If you're in a crisis, please seek immediate professional help or contact a crisis hotline. Listening to this podcast does not create a therapist-client relationship. For personal advice, please consult with your licensed mental health professional in your area. Remember, your mental health journey is unique. While we hope this information is helpful, it is crucial to work directly with the qualified personnel for your specific needs. Thank you again for tuning into Coach Soul, and we'll see you next time.